Chapter 949. Lu Qingru smiled and murmured, "Qin I believe you now, but it's different now. I have my own judgment on some things. Don't worry, I won't do anything to the Shen family. As long as you stay by my side obediently and let me love you, I promise they won't have to worry. The Shen family is righteous, and your Xianming sect has killed countless people. Letting them stay in the Xianming sect is like smearing their dirty blood on their bodies." Lu Qingru. "Don't worry, they won't stay for long. This is all up to you. As long as you don't think of running away, I won't do anything to them. Qin believe me, I've always been this indulgent towards you. Nothing is more important than you staying by my side. Even if the people I let go or offend are my future enemies, as long as you say the word, I won't do anything to them. Sooner or later, you'll regret it. As long as you're by my side, I won't regret it for the rest of my life." As they spoke, they quickly arrived at the inn from before. It was already late at night. Because of the news of Pang Yuan's disappearance, there was no one on the road at this time. Even the candles in the inn were extinguished. Shen Yueji was about to lift the curtain of the carriage and get down. A white hand blocked her way down. She turned around and glanced at Lu Qingru. "I'll let the right protector bring him back to the Xianming sect." "Bring him back to the Xianming sect? Qin I can only feel at ease when you're by my side. I've always been tolerant towards you, but at the same time, I'm also narrow-minded. Even if he doesn't have much time left, I won't let you be alone with him for the next 3 months. I'll let the right protector bring him back to the Xianming sect and let you talk to him there." "Right protector? Yes. I want to see him first." "Sure. It just so happens that I have something to do at this time. Qin be good and wait for me to come back." Lu Qingru's departure was undoubtedly not good for Shen Yueji. She didn't have any expression on her face, but in her heart, she couldn't wait for Lu Qingru to leave. As if seeing through her inner thoughts, Lu Qingru smiled slightly but didn't say anything. She turned around and got off the carriage. Not long after, Shen Yueji also got off. The right protector had met him once in the Feng Nation. She was still respectful to her. "Young lady Shen, please follow this subordinate." "What? Aren't you afraid that your master will be in danger if you don't follow her when she goes out to handle some matters? Compared to the Holy Maiden's danger, I'm sure that in the Holy Maiden's eyes, Miss Shen's danger is more important than the Holy Maiden's. Don't worry Miss Shen, the Saintess won't be in danger." Whether Lu Qingru was in danger or not, to be honest, she really didn't want to care. She had long since lost the innocent friendship she once had with Lu Qingru. She only knew that under the premise that Lu Qingru treated her well, she actually had this kind of dirty motive. Now, in order to force her to submit, they even used her closest kin to threaten her. Previously, because of her complicated feelings, Shen Yueji did not remember which room she had come out from. It was only with the guidance of the right protector that she found the previous room. He was about to push the door open. He heard a series of heart-wrenching coughs coming from inside. She felt an inexplicable pain in her heart. He pushed the door open and entered. The man did not expect the door to be pushed open at this time. When he raised his head, his gaze met Shen Yueji's. Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, The Prince Regent, Provoking the Body Claw Book House for free. Chapter 950. On his pale and handsome face, there was a flash of surprise, followed by joy. But this joy did not last long. She saw him take out a handkerchief to wipe the blood at the corner of his mouth and bury the dark red blood in the handkerchief. "Qin He called her name in a weak voice. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Shen Yueji quickly walked in front of him and looked at his pale face. "Why didn't you tell me? You made a deal with Lu Qingru?" Feng Jiuqing looked at her with a pale face and suddenly smiled. His smile was as gentle as before. When he smiled, it was as warm as the spring breeze in March. Shen Yueji's eyes were in a trance as she looked at this familiar and strange face. In the past, she could have nothing, whether it was the family she longed for, or other things. When she felt that she was abandoned by the world, it was Feng Jiuqing who gave her the only light. "Because I know that you and I can never go back to the past." The man smiled gently, caressing her beautiful face, to be able to know that you are doing very well, I am already very satisfied. Qin even if you die, you have no regrets. Actually, how could he be satisfied? All along, this man was not a person who knew how to be satisfied. The only thing he was satisfied with was the woman in front of him. The woman he loved for a lifetime. He once swore in his heart that he would love her for a lifetime, but in the end, heavens will play tricks on people. Feng Zhouqing, you don't owe me anything. The person who really owes me is him, not you. Whether it is you or him, I have already let it go. You don't have to do this. Shen Yueji's expression was complicated. Lu Qingru wants to bring you back to Shenming sect. But for me, it doesn't matter where I go, as long as. He looked at Shen Yueji and moved his lips, but in the end, he did not say anything. Right Protector was outside the door, but she was observing every movement inside. When she heard the voice inside suddenly stopped, she frowned and looked inside. Suddenly, Shua. A cold light flashed in front of her. Fortunately, she reacted in time, but she was still hit by a black ball in the face. At first, she did not feel anything, until a strange feeling came from her face. That painful and itchy feeling made her quickly put down the sword in her hand and scratch her face. But then, the strange feeling became more and more intense, as if thousands of insects were biting and gnawing at her face. At that moment, she was in so much pain that she wanted to die. She covered her face and squatted on the ground, unable to get up for a long time. She kept sucking in a breath of cold air and covered her face until a strong black eagle appeared in front of her. She raised her head and looked up. When she saw Qiu Yang's indifferent face, she was stunned. She gritted her teeth fiercely and endured the intense pain on her face. Her dangerous gaze was like a sharp sword. She could not wait to cut the person in front of her into 1,000 pieces. Qiu Yang, how dare you? If it weren't for Shen Yueji, the Saintess wouldn't have cooperated with them at all. It was precisely because they had nothing to guard against. A dying person had nothing, so she let down her guard against them. But she didn't expect that they would play dirty behind her back. Qiu Yang was Feng Zhouqing's trusted guard. If it wasn't for Feng Zhouqing's permission, he wouldn't have dared to do anything to her. The corpse-dissolving powder of the martial world is only used by evil sects like you. I believe you know it better than anyone else, right? Qiu Yang's face was cold as he bent down in front of her. He saw that her face was already rotten because of the corpse-dissolving powder. She was struggling on the ground because of the pain. In this world, only my master can use others. There are few people who dare to treat my master like a fish on an iron plate. He sneered, Shenming cult. The Right Protector's eyes were red from the pain. He glared at him fiercely. Qiu Yang, Feng Zhouqing has taken our Shenming cult's resurrection GU. There is less than 3 months. Within these 3 months, he will experience a pain that others will not be able to experience. If you are obedient, perhaps the Saintess can let your master not suffer so much pain and torture before he dies. Cough cough. After saying so much in one breath, the Right Protector suddenly coughed violently. Ha ha. After saying so much in one breath, the Right Protector suddenly coughed violently. Now, my master is already like a walking corpse. What is pain to him? Other than forcing and threatening people, how can your Shenming cult understand these principles? Have a good taste of the evil you have sown. Ah, the Right Protector suddenly raised his head and let out a sharp scream. Hearing the scream outside, Shen Yueji was shocked. She subconsciously stood up and wanted to go outside. Qin. The man stood up with her. He grabbed her hand and held her in his arms. Don't go. Don't dirty my eyes with filthy things. What did you do to her? Don't worry. General Shen and the others are fine. I have already ordered Qiu Yang to settle them in a safe place. He lightly touched the tip of the girl's nose. Qin, this is the only thing I can do for you. Her eyes were red and tears were flowing. What about you? The resurrection GU of the Shenming cult is a poisonous thing. What good will it do for you to fall out with Lu Qingru at this time? The good is, the man's pale chin was placed on the girl's forehead. Hello, everything I have done is worth it. In the forest at that time. After returning, Shen Yueji was not found. Mo Wushang also ordered people to search for double happiness for a long time. Your Majesty, looking at Mo Wushang's emotionless face, double happiness felt fear for the first time. Miss was taken away by Lu Qingru. Lu Qingru, I have always granted Qina every request. If it wasn't for her request, why would I force her to take her away? A sarcastic female voice came from afar. Then, she slowly landed in front of the man. Lu Qingru's beautiful face was even more eye-catching than when she was in Feng Nation. Mo Wushang, let's talk. Young master, it's this woman, it's her. With a scream, double happiness did not have time to finish her words. As the woman suddenly raised her hand, her whole body flew out uncontrollably. She fell from mid-air. If it wasn't for Ji Chu suddenly appearing and catching her firmly. Falling from such a high place, even if she did not fall to her death, she would still be half-crippled. Double happiness is Miss Shen's trusted servant. Is it Miss Shen's tacit consent to hurt her? Hong Fui sneered and appeared in front of Lu Qingru. In addition, there were also some embroidered secret guards with high martial arts skills surrounding her. But Lu Qingru was not afraid at all. Instead, she looked at Mo Wushang. Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Regent, Provoking Body Claw Book House for free. Chapter 951. I'm here to talk to you. If you want to fight, I'm more than happy to oblige. The Imperial Court and the Dark North sect are evenly matched. If we really fight, I don't think the Dark North Imperial family will be a match for the Xianming sect. Where is Ji? The man's voice was cold. His handsome face was as cold as ice. Compared to Feng Zhouqing, Lu Qingru had always felt a sense of resistance and fear towards Mo Wushang. But now that she had the mysterious dark sect behind her, even though her fear towards him had dissipated a little, it still remained. The man in front of her was definitely more dangerous than Feng Zhouqing, and he was definitely a threat to her. If you want to know Qina's whereabouts, follow me obediently. As soon as she finished speaking, she leaped up and disappeared into the darkness. Your Majesty. When Ji Chu saw that he was going to leave with Lu Qingru regardless of anything else, he hesitantly stopped him. Your Majesty, the people of Xianming sect are ruthless, sinister, and cunning. If you follow her. That's right. What if there is an ambush set up at the place she is going to deal with you? We'll go with you. We haven't found Imperial Consort Pang yet. If Your Majesty leaves at this time. Mo Wushang didn't even look at the people who tried to dissuade him. He said coldly, in this world, besides her, no one can kill me. He followed Lu Qingru all the way to a forest overgrown with weeds. As soon as Mo Wushang arrived, he smelled the smell of blood. Obviously, there had been a fierce battle here. But Mo Wushang wasn't worried. The smell of blood was related to Shen Yueji. If it was someone else, they would have panicked after smelling the blood. Aren't you worried at all? Aren't you afraid that I'll kill her? Would you? That's right, I won't. I'll kill anyone in this world except for her. Lu Qingru's eyes suddenly burst into laughter. How could this filthy smell of blood possibly belong to Qina? This is the blood of that bitch, Pang Yuan. Those people were all looking for Pang Yuan's whereabouts. But Mo Wushang's face remained expressionless even when he found out about Pang Yuan's whereabouts. Even when she said that the blood came from her body, there was no change in his expression. It was as though he was listening to the life and death of a stranger. Feng Zhouqing came all the way from the Feng Nation for Qin. Dark North, Mo Wushang, Pang Yuan wasn't lying to you. The man in the inn tonight was Feng Zhouqing. On the day that Qina left, she was indeed with a wild man. She spent the entire day with Feng Zhouqing, and they shared their feelings inside. She accurately captured the sharp blade that flashed past the man's dark eyes. Lu Qingru smiled even more proudly. She took a step forward and circled around the man. You've liked Qina for so many years, and I admit that Qina has agreed to be with you now. But she already knows the truth back then. She knows that Feng Zhouqing had his own difficulties, and she knows that there are two souls living in his body. She also knows that Feng Zhouqing's promise to her has never changed, and his feelings for her have never changed. For her, He even disregarded his lifespan and was willing to sacrifice his last 3 months just to be with her. Do you think that Qin wouldn't be touched by such a sacrifice? At the end of the day, how can the two of us compare to the weight of Feng Joqing in her heart? He's the man she's loved for so many years, especially when all the misunderstandings from back then have collapsed. Mo Wushang, on what basis do you still believe that Jiu Yuqin will choose to be with you? Don't be silly. The person that Qin truly likes has always been Feng Joqing. She has never loved you. She's only willing to come to the Dark North with you because she's doing it for her own good. Shut up. Nothing could provoke him more than hearing that the woman he loved didn't love him, and was with another man instead. All along, Mo Wushang knew that he couldn't feel Shen Yueji's love for him, but he never regretted it. He only wanted to be good to her, and he knew that one day, Qin would accept him. Today, it was the best response. But when she heard that Feng Joqing came to the Dark North, and heard what he did for Shen Yueji, Lu Qingru was right. That was the man she loved for so many years. After learning of his difficulties and the sacrifices he had made, she knew of his feelings for her. She knew that his feelings for her had always been real and had never changed. Mo Wushang, don't you love Qin very much? Then why can't you let go and let them be? The person that Qin loves is Feng Joqing, and you're just doing it for her own good. Now that she and Feng Joqing have already buried the hatchet and stayed in the room for an entire day, what will happen during this day, and what they will do inside, I'm sure you know without me saying much, right? Bang! A swift and fierce palm wind suddenly struck towards her. Lu Qingru seemed to have expected it, but she didn't dodge at all, and took the hit head-on. Then, her thin body flew out like a kite with a broken string. Dark red blood spurted out from the corner of her mouth, and she used her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. What are you angry about? Didn't you say that you loved her the most? You're also one of the people who caused her death. Compared to that, what do you think your later sacrifice is? You really can't compare to Feng Joqing. Every word that Lu Qingru said was like a gem, and it was like a knife was ruthlessly carved into his heart. He was covered with cuts and bruises, and it was so painful that he couldn't breathe. Where is she? Where? Naturally, she's with Feng Joqing. Compared to you, I'm more willing to see her with that man. At least, when they're together, Qin's smile is sincere, and no longer a perfunctory smile. Lu Qingru continued to provoke him fearlessly. In terms of martial arts, she wasn't Mo Wushang's opponent at all, so she didn't really intend to do anything to him. The only thing she could do was to provoke him with these words. Mo Wushang, you'd better not disturb her, don't let her hate you again. You should know that the current Qin is in a dilemma. If you really love her and cherish her, you should stay away from her, and take the initiative to withdraw. That way, she won't be in a difficult position, right? This emperor is asking you, where is she? Do you think that I'll tell you? Saintus, it's bad. Something's happened, the right protector, she. Lu Qingru didn't have long to be proud of herself, when an anxious change suddenly came from behind her. She turned around abruptly, and her fair face twisted. What? What happened? Baidu, read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Prince Regent, Provoking Clawbook House for free. Chapter 952. The person knelt on the ground in fear and looked at her. Right protector. Something happened to the right protector. Something happened to the right protector. She had arranged for the right protector to stay by Qin's side to protect her. Her heart tightened and she picked up the woman from the ground. What about Qin? What about Qin? Replying to Saintus, it was the right protector, Miss Shen. Miss Shen is fine. Hearing her say that Qin was fine, Lu Qingru's worried heart finally relaxed. She slightly released her and lowered her eyes to look at her. What happened to the right guardian? The right protector's martial arts were high and she was her left and right assistant alongside the left protector. Just one of them was enough to resist an army. Yes, the person didn't know how to tell Lu Qingru in front of Mo Wushang. Seeing her apprehension, Lu Qingru clenched her fists fiercely and glared at Mo Wushang with unwillingness. Our conversation today will end here. I still have matters to attend to when I return. Mo Wushang, you better think carefully about what I said. After all, we are doing this for Qina's sake, right? Mo Wushang didn't stop her anymore as he watched her walk away. Because there was no need to stop her. His eyes were as dark as a bottomless abyss. It was as if he could be sucked in if someone looked at him. Your Majesty, Ji Chu and Hong Fui also rushed over. Almost as soon as they arrived, they smelled the thick smell of blood. Both of them frowned at the same time. Why is the smell of blood here so strong? Did you kill that woman from the Xianming sect? Otherwise, why would there be such a strong smell of blood? Hong Fui frowned and looked at him. The man didn't move. His handsome face was like an ice blade. After hearing his words, he turned around and looked at him. It's Pang Yuan. Pang Yuan? Both of their expressions changed. They had sent people to search for Pang Yuan's whereabouts for a long time but to no avail. They didn't expect her to be here. Then they thought this thick, disgusting smell of blood was probably coming from Pang Yuan's body. Didn't that mean that Pang Yuan had an accident? Otherwise, how could there be such a strong smell of blood on her body? Even if he was heavily injured, it was impossible for him to be like this. There was no time to think. Hong Fui's expression changed, and he almost immediately brushed away the bushes to look for it. Sure enough, after looking around, following the strong smell of blood, they found a corpse in a pile of weeds. The body did not belong to Pang Yuan, but to her maid, Xiao Er. Hong Fui still remembered the maid dress that she wore when she left the palace today. As a man, he couldn't help but be shocked when he saw the scene before him. He saw that Xiao Er, who was originally a living person, was now a corpse, as if it had been crushed by something. It was fragmented, and no human shape could be seen at all. From head to toe, there was not a single part of her body that was intact. The only part of her that wasn't damaged was the clothes she was wearing. Where is Pang Yuan? Even a maidservant was tortured to such a state. Who was it that had such a deep hatred with her? Needless to say, Pang Yuan's fate would definitely be 100 times worse than this miserable servant girl's. The servant girl had suffered such inhumane torture. Needless to say, Pang Yuan's fate would definitely be 100 times worse than this miserable servant girl. Sure enough, Ji Chu did not search for long. In another bush, he found Pang Yuan's body. Compared to Xiao Er's body, Pang Yuan's body was incomparable. After Hong Fui saw it, he did not take a breath for a long time. After a long time, his eyes silently stared at Pang Yuan's body. Mo Wushang, come and see for yourself. The man seemed to have not heard it and turned his body indifferently. Mo Wushang. Hong Fui's voice involuntarily became louder. Come and see. Pang Yuan was tortured like this, and after her death, she did not even have a whole body. If Grand Tutor Pang knew about this, how are you going to explain it to him? This matter is related to Shen Yueji. Everyone knows what happened at the inn tonight. With so many eyes watching, Pang Yuan's death must have something to do with Shen Yueji. It has nothing to do with her. I know it has nothing to do with her, but will Grand Tutor Pang believe it? Will those people believe it? Tonight, Pang Yuan confidently said that Shen Yueji had an affair with another man. Before returning to the palace, she was brutally murdered. All the spearheads are pointing at Shen Yueji, and now she is missing. Hong Fui still wanted to say something. However, he also knew that there were some things that did not need to be said. In fact, Mo Wushang understood. For example, the matter that happened tonight, all the spearheads were pointing at Shen Yueji. It was obvious that she had something to do with it. Even if they believed Shen Yueji, what could they do? Would Grand Tutor Pang believe it? Would the people present and those who came here believe it? None of them. Now, it is better not to spread the matter of Pang Yuan's death. This way, we still have enough time to save Shen Yueji. With her as a witness, and the Xianming sect's interference, we will definitely be able to prove her innocence. The main thing was that she had also disappeared. Even if they knew the truth, it was difficult not to suspect her, let alone Grand Tutor Pang and the others. This servant. I can also testify. I am the person that mistrusts the most. Double happiness came out of the darkness. She had seen all kinds of scenes in her life. Only this time, when she saw Pang Yuan and Xiao Er's corpses, she would not be able to sleep peacefully for a few months. Just Xiao alone was enough to scare her to death. She did not expect that besides Xiao, there was also Pang Yuan. After these two master and servant died, one was more horrified than the other, and one was more frightening than the other. In the past, she had only heard of the Xianming sect and knew that it was an evil sect. After all, it was an evil sect of the northern underworld, which was thousands of miles away from the Foam country. She was just a servant of the general's mansion. Now, just seeing Pang Yuan and Xiao miserable state, double happiness could not help but worry about Shen Yueji. If Miss did not fall for Lu Qingrou's trick, would that pervert do anything to Miss? Also, the general and madam were in Lu Qingrou's hands. That pervert had already destroyed one of young Master Shangguan's arms. Thinking of Shangguan Yu, double happiness felt sorry for him. She did not know how pitiful young Master Shangguan was. What did he do wrong? Why was he treated like this? He used to love Miss, but was despised by Miss. Now, he only wanted to see Miss happy, but he was tortured to this state by that pervert, Pang Yuan. If Grand Tutor Pang saw his daughter's miserable state, not to mention that you are the person that Shen Yueji trusts the most. Baidu read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Prince Regent, Provoking Body Claw book house for free. Chapter 953. Hong Fui sighed and patted her head. Little girl, this is the most miserable. Grand Tutor Pang can't wait to cut your young miss into pieces, let alone you, your young miss's most trusted servant. Believe me, Grand Tutor Pang will not let you off easily. But young miss said to let her stay. Young miss had already left. If she followed, she was afraid that your young miss asked you to stay to give Mo Wushang an explanation, not to give those people. I say, you have been by your young miss's side for so long, how can you not understand such a simple thing? Shuang, she did not think so much, she only wanted to do as young miss said. After all, young master would protect her for young miss's sake. Oh right. She suddenly turned her head and looked at Mo Wushang. Young master, I have something to say to you. Don't misunderstand young miss. Young miss was threatened by Lu Qingrou. Lu Qingrou, that pervert, kidnapped the general, madam, and young Master Shangguan. She even cut off one of his arms. Young misses, she did not do it because of Feng Jiuqing, but she wanted to say more. The man's cold eyes looked at her. No need to explain, I believe her. Seeing that Mo Wushang did not misunderstand her young miss, Shuang she let out a sigh of relief. She did not know what Lu Qingrou said to young master when she took him away, but as long as young master believed young miss, it was good. Compared to young miss, no one believed her. If at this time, even young master did not believe her, she would really be alone and helpless. Then, young master, what should we do now? Since Lu Qingrou threatened young miss with the general and madam's lives, and young miss compromised, Lu Qingrou knew that young miss would choose to leave with her because of the general and madam. But young miss was pitiful, she was used and schemed against for no reason. This matter needs to be considered. If we make a decision now, I am afraid it will backfire. After all, we have seen Xianming sect's methods. For now, we should first deal with Pang Yuan's matter. Shuangxi, in the future, everything in the palace will be the same. As for your young miss, you can lie that she is seriously ill. With His Majesty there, no one will dare to say anything. But Grand Tutor Pang hid it. What about Empress Dowager? Shuangxi asked carefully. Her words stunned Hong Fui for a moment. He supported his chin with one hand and said, logically speaking, the Empress Dowager treated Pang Yuan as her own daughter, but in recent days, Pang Yuan's actions had caused the last bit of kindness the Empress Dowager had for her to disappear. But compared to Shen Yueji, the Empress Dowager's heart should be biased towards Pang Yuan, right? After all, she had watched Pang Yuan grow up. In addition, Grand Tutor Pang had been loyal to Dark North all these years, and Pang Yuan's mother had died to save the Empress Dowager. If Grand Tutor Pang can't find his daughter, plus what will happen at the Lantern Festival tonight, Empress Dowager will be very anxious. She will, if Empress Dowager can't find her daughter, plus what will happen at the Lantern Festival tonight, Empress Dowager will be very anxious. She will, if I am not anxious, are you not going to tell me these things? Xian's dignified voice came from behind. Apart from Mo Wushang, everyone else's heart was in their throats. After all, she was the Empress Dowager. Although Xian usually gave people the impression that she was kind and easy to talk to, tonight she was full of the dignity of the Empress Dowager. Even Hong Fui, who had always been unruly, couldn't help but be more well-behaved in front of her. She bowed respectfully. Empress Dowager. The white-haired granny followed closely behind Empress Dowager. Xian's eyes swept across everyone present. Finally, her dignified eyes fell on Mo Wushang. She quickly looked at Shuangxi and said, "You are Jiye's most trusted servant. I am willing to believe what you say." Empress Dowager, Shuangxi was so scared that she knelt on the ground with a thud. "Empress Dowager, please believe me. My miss is not that kind of person. Imperial Consort Pang's death has nothing to do with my miss. My miss doesn't know anything at all. Today is the Lantern Festival. My miss was kidnapped. When she woke up, it was already late at night. I can see Miss's feelings for His Majesty. Miss is just a person who doesn't know how to express herself, but she treats us very well, including His Majesty. She will never betray His Majesty. If Miss really has no feelings for His Majesty, why would she be unwilling to travel thousands of miles to go to the northern underworld alone? Empress Dowager, this is also a bet for Miss. The feelings of the Emperor are the most untrustworthy since ancient times. But Miss still came for the Emperor. If she loses this bet, what will happen to her? Empress Dowager, you are also a woman and a member of the royal family. I think you know this." Naturally, because she knew, Xian was more tolerant of Shenyueji in the past. Take tonight, for example. After learning about her disappearance, Pang Yuan's accusations, and Shenyueji's silence showed that she was willing to believe her. She believed Pang Yuan's words because she was an imperial consort of Feng country after all. It was reasonable for her to see Feng Joqing. There were rumors in Feng country that the emperor of Feng country really doted on her. It was impossible for Feng Joqing to be indifferent to her for so long in the northern underworld. Therefore, when Pang Yuan said there was a man in the inn, she guessed that the man was undoubtedly Feng Joqing. At the same time, she also believed in Shenyueji's feelings for Shang-Er. If she really had no feelings for Shang-Er, why would she travel thousands of miles to the northern underworld like Double Happiness said? There were so many rumors in the outside world. Faced with so many people's accusations and difficulties, if it wasn't for Shang-Er in her heart, why would she do it? Thinking of this, Xian's expression softened a little. Perhaps it was because she learned about Pang Yuan's tragic death, which made her think of her mother again. It was inevitable that she would feel sad. Even though she knew that everything that happened to Pang Yuan today was what she deserved, she was still the girl she watched grow up. She also sincerely loved her and treated her as her own daughter. If the late emperor had not passed away early, she would have wanted another daughter with him. Actually, Xian still liked his daughter very much. She did not go to see Pang Yuan's tragic state, afraid that she could not bear it. Instead, she shook her head. "I will talk to Grand Tutor Pang. I will suppress him during this period of time. But you must know that Wn is the daughter of the woman he loves. Since young, he has loved her in every way. If a hair on Wn is hurt, he will blame himself to death." Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, The Prince Regent, Messing with Clawbook House for free. Chapter 954. I've always felt guilty towards the Pang family. All these years, I've fulfilled all their requests, and Grand Tutor Pang never deliberately made things difficult for me. He only did his duty as an official. Now that his daughter has died tragically, it's my responsibility. I didn't protect her well. If I hadn't driven her out of the carriage, none of this would have happened. The Empress Dowager drove Imperial Consort Pang off the carriage for this servant's sake. If you really want to talk about the fault. Granny Zhu stood up and said, "This servant is the one at fault. I was only beaten. This servant's lowly life is not worth mentioning at all. Granny Zhu, in my eyes, I've never treated you as a servant. To me, you're my elder sister. This matter has nothing to do with you. You don't need to put the blame on yourself." Xian closed his eyes. Perhaps, this is her fate. Fate made her like this. No matter what they did, it would be futile. Everyone present knew that Pang Yuan had done all kinds of bad things and killed countless innocent people. Even without Shen Yueji, those people would still want to cut her into pieces. If it weren't for her identity, Pang Yuan's death, for them, was the greatest satisfaction. I'll give you enough time to bring Jia back. I'll wait for Grand Tutor Pang to calm down and explain this matter to him. After saying this, she walked towards Mo Wushang and stopped in front of him. After so many years, the man in front of her was no longer the same as he was when he was young. He was short and could only stand beside her. When she looked at him, she had to lower her head. Now, he had grown up. Cian even had to raise his head to look at him. His face was a rare beauty in this world. It was 90% similar to his father's. Every time Cian saw him, it was as if he was looking at that man. She stretched out her hand and tidied up the man's messy robe. Shong you know that all these years, ever since you became mature, you've always had your own opinions. I've never forced you to do anything. Because compared to you being the emperor, I hope that you can be like an ordinary family, carefree and without worries. You don't need to carry so many burdens and responsibilities like your father. Don't blame Ari Jiao for bringing so many women into the palace for you. It's just that you're his only son. Ari Jiao doesn't wish for the Beiming family's descendant to be destroyed by mother's hands. He has done so much for me, so I should repay him with something. Otherwise, how can he raise his head in front of those ancestors of the northern underworld? I know you don't want to be the emperor. I forced you to be the emperor. I also know you only want to follow that woman, even if you have to look at her every day. But Shong Beiming Kingdom cannot fall into someone else's hands. Beiming Kingdom's surname cannot belong to someone else. This is the kingdom of the Northern Dark Kingdom, your father's kingdom. I want you to remember that no matter when, even if you hate being the emperor, you must be the emperor of the Northern Dark Kingdom. Before there is someone to inherit your throne, I won't allow you to abdicate the throne. This is the only thing I beg of you. Can you do it? For Mo Wushang, Cian had already made the biggest concession. Mo Wushang naturally understood the meaning of her words. The man was silent. Cian stared at him for a while. My son has good taste and picked a good woman. I'm quite satisfied with Ji. Mother Zhu, let's go. Yes, Empress Dowager. After taking a few steps forward, Cian stopped again. She didn't look back, but her words were directed at him. Shong in mother's eyes, you're the best man in the world. Ari Jiao is also an experienced person. In terms of women, Ari Jiao understands Jia better than you. You have to believe that she has you in her heart. Do you know how much a woman has sacrificed to put down everything and make such a big bet to go to the Northern Dark Kingdom to be with you? Once she loses the bet, then she will be doomed eternally. Your Majesty, for a long time after Cian left, Mo Wushang stood in the same place without moving. Ji Chu stepped forward and called out to him. Mo Wushang looked up at him. Summon the palace's secret guards. We are going to the Xianming sect. Yes. The Xianming sect and the royal family were evenly matched. If the two were to fight, no one would benefit. The meaning of the emperor's words was clear. Even if the royal family was hurt and other countries had a chance to take advantage of, they had to rescue Miss and the general. Shuangshi's nose turned sour. There was an urge to cry. Inexplicably, she felt very uncomfortable. At the same time, she felt relieved. Son-in-law really loved Miss was so miserable when she was alive. Now, in this life, there was someone who could protect her and love her. Miss should be happy. Maybe after hearing son-in-law's words, Miss would be even happier. At the same time, she hated Lu Qingru. Miss and son-in-law could clearly live together happily. Why did Lu Qingru have to come and cross the line? This damn pervert. If it was a man, it would be fine. But it had to be a woman. Just that kind of thinking made people feel extremely disgusted. This is. Shen Yueji had only heard of the reputation of the Xianming sect. As for the specific location of the Xianming sect, she had never been to it. Following Feng Jiuqing, Lin Fan came to a mountain peak that was 10,000 feet tall. There were mountain peaks everywhere, and at the places where the mountain peaks were stacked together, there were all sorts of flowers, grass, and trees. It was really a paradise on earth. This is the Xianming sect. In her mind, the Xianming sect should be a place full of terror and blood. She didn't expect it to be so green, like a paradise. No wonder Lu Qingru had revealed to her more than once that the Xianming sect was a very good place. As long as she went there, she would definitely like it. If it was in the past, she would have fallen in love with the profound dark sect when she saw it like this. If not for Mo Wushang, she would have chosen to stay. However, after knowing Lu Qingrou's thoughts and the fact that she had imprisoned her father and mother, the scene in front of her changed her mind. Perhaps this was the human heart. Even everything around her would be disgusted by it. Don't worry. Although this is the Xianming sect, there is no one guarding it. This is the back door of the Xianming sect. Ordinary people don't know about it. I have already told General Shun and Madame Shun to move them from the back door. They are right in front. Feng Zhouqing pointed to a mountain peak in front of them that wasn't very high. Coincidentally, from this angle, Shen Yueji could clearly see a small cave in front of them. There was something blocking the entrance of the cave. But if one looked closely, it was not difficult to see that this cave could hide people. Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, The Regent, Messing with the Body Claw book house for free. Chapter 955. Without caring about anything else, Shen Yueji walked forward quickly. But halfway through, the man held her hand. There are steep cliffs everywhere. You're not familiar with the scenery here. Be careful of danger. The man put his arms around her waist. Don't worry, they are fine. I will take you in. The man's embrace was as warm as usual, which made Shen Yueji reluctant to leave. But they could never go back to the past. Feng Zhouqing, do you know that doing this will make me feel like I owe you? She felt the man's big hand around her waist suddenly tighten. Then, she heard his gentle and smiling voice. "Oh you? Qin, this is what I should do." The cave was blocked by a big stone, but fortunately, there was a mechanism. After Qiu Yang pressed the mechanism, the stone door opened with a loud bang. Compared to the outside, it was frighteningly quiet inside. Looking into the dark cave, there was some light. As she wished, she saw Shen He and Shen Qiu leaning against the stone wall and resting. Almost on the spot, Shen Yueji's eyes turned red. Nothing was more important than their safety. Seeing them safe and sound was what she wanted. She quickly walked towards them. Shen He and Shen Qiu looked up when they heard the footsteps. When they saw Shen Yueji, their eyes turned red at the same time. But Shen He did not ignore Feng Zhouqing behind Shen Yueji. He suddenly stood up and bowed to Feng Zhouqing. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Feng Zhouqing came forward and helped him up. "Old General Shen, you don't have to be so polite. This is what I should do." After a simple greeting, Shen Yueji's eyes fell on Shangguan Yu. He was in a bad condition. He had lost an arm. Because of the special situation, it was not bandaged and could only be treated simply. Even the wound was wrapped in tattered clothes. Shen Yukai stayed by his side, wiping the cold sweat on his forehead. He was in a state of unconsciousness, hazy. But for some reason, he did not wake up in the past few days. But after hearing Shen Yueji's voice, he seemed to wake up a little. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at Shen Yueji. When he saw that she was really there, he reached out to her with a trembling hand. Shen Yueji quickly walked in front of him and held his hand. Tears finally flowed out of her eyes. She owed Shangguan Yu, and she would never be able to repay him in this lifetime. In fact, Shangguan Yu was innocent. This matter had nothing to do with him. However, he was still implicated because of her and ended up in such a state. "Jia, there's no need to blame yourself. I did all of this on my own accord. It has nothing to do with you." Shen Yueji shook her head. "I will bring you back to the northern underworld. Mo Wushang and Empress Dowager have already promised me." "Phut, Your Majesty!" Qiu Yang screamed. He interrupted her next words. Feng Zhouqing suddenly spat out a mouthful of black blood. After that, his entire body went limp. Qiu Yang rushed forward to support him. The man's handsome face was deathly pale at this moment. Feng Jiuqing. Shen Yueji's expression also changed. She quickly walked in front of him and took him from Qiu Yang's arms. Now, the man was like a dying man, so weak that he was not even worth mentioning. How did he become like this? This gave Shen Yueji a bad premonition. Didn't you say, she looked at him up and down and murmured with difficulty. Didn't you say that there are still 3 months? It's only been a few days. The resurrection Jiyu has always been under the command of the Xianming sect Saintus. I think that Lu Qingru already knows about the Right Guardian's death and knows about your majesty, Shun he sighed. He knew that this was not the time to tell Shen Yueji this, but he still said it. It should be Lu Qingru who has controlled the resurrection Jiyu. What will happen? Shen Yueji could not even breathe now. The person who has been poisoned by the resurrection Jiyu will feel like 1,000 arrows piercing through his heart. All the pain during this period of time is the result of shutting off the resurrection Jiyu. I'm afraid that your majesty. I'm afraid. He will be tortured for half an hour. His 7 orifices will bleed and all his organs will be devoured by the resurrection Jiyu. In the end, he will be unrecognizable and die a cruel death. Qiu Yang closed his eyes and continued Shen his words. In an instant, a cold chill almost paralyzed her limbs. Shen Yueji hugged Feng Jiuqing with trembling body. Why did this happen? Her lips trembled as she murmured. Why did this happen? She did not want any of them to die. She did not want Feng Jiuqing to die either. In these last 3 months, she had already decided that she would accompany him and spend the last 3 months with him. But, the man had difficulty breathing. He could not even speak properly. He held Shen Yueji's hand with difficulty. He wanted to touch her pale face, but he did not have the strength to stretch it out. Shin, don't cry. It's me. Fut, every time he said a word, a big mouthful of blood would flow out from the corner of his mouth. In the end, he could not even speak a complete sentence. It's me. I didn't protect you well. If he had been able to protect her well, then such a thing would not have happened, and there would not have been so many misunderstandings between them. She still belonged to him. He had already prepared himself to die. Now that she had fallen in love with someone else, and that man treated her well, he was already very satisfied to see her happy before he died. Don't cry. Don't cry. He gave her a smile with difficulty. Just stay with me for a little longer. Just a little longer. Feng Jiuqing, you're so silly. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Why did you hide it from me from the beginning? If he had told her earlier, then there would not have been these misunderstandings between them. Perhaps, he would not have died, and everything that happened later would not have happened. I'm sorry, it was not that he did not think of telling her the truth, but, it was just that this kind of thing, even he could not believe it sometimes, let alone an outsider. She was just a delicate woman, and he did not want to scare her. The only regret is that I can no longer fulfill the promise I made to you. Chang'an City, the fireworks of Chang'an City, I can no longer bring you to see it. Shen Yueji hugged him tightly in her arms. Seeing blood flowing out of his eyes, nose, and mouth, her heart ached so much that she could not breathe. Don't say any more. Don't say any more. I won't let you say any more. Shut up, shut up. I don't want to hear it, please, don't say any more, Feng Jiuqing, don't say any more. If those things did not happen before, if Feng Jiuqing only belonged to him, perhaps they would even have a child now, and no one knew how happy they would be. But now, there was no turning back. Everything had happened, and they could no longer go back to the beginning. They could no longer go back. Baidu read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Prince Regent, Messing with Body Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 956. Shun He, who was standing at the side, also shed tears. He was the great general of Feng country. He had shed blood and been injured in his life, but he had never shed a tear. Now that he saw this scene, he couldn't help but sigh. Shun Qiu wiped his tears with a handkerchief. If it wasn't for fate, Qin and him would have been a wonderful story. Perhaps she wouldn't have died even if she was a daughter. I challenged Nan Yu. If the two countries fight, Nan Yu will benefit. Qin, you don't have to worry, he will. Actually, you've already done all this, haven't you? Secretly, she had already done all of this. Shen Yueji closed her eyes and let her tears fall. The more Feng Zhouqing acted like this, the more she felt indebted to him. In fact, he had never wronged her or betrayed her. If only she had known, perhaps she wouldn't have. But another mouthful of black blood spurted out. This time, Shen Yueji was completely flustered, especially when she saw the man's palm coming at her. He didn't even want to stay for the last hour. The pain of the Gu resurrection, Qin, I really can't take it. But blood spurted out from his 6 orifices. In the end, he slowly closed his eyes. Shen Yueji hugged his body and didn't respond for a long time. Qiu Yang stepped forward. Lady Shen, actually, His Majesty is. Shen Yueji shook her head. Don't say it. I know. He can't bear to leave me. He can't bear to leave me. She still had a tacit understanding with Feng Zhouqing. After so many years of living together, she actually understood him. He had done everything he needed to do for her. He also wanted to talk to her for the rest of the time, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to leave her if he stayed with her any longer. He was afraid of her tears, afraid that she would see him die miserably. He was afraid that she wouldn't be able to rest in peace for the rest of her life. The people around him all knelt on the ground. Shen Yueji didn't seem to hear their cries. She hugged Feng Zhouqing's body alone and held his head in her arms, crying silently. All that flashed through her mind were the sweet moments they spent together. It was all because when they were together, there was no power, and there were not so many strangers who could disturb them. It was his promise, and it was her bashfully leaning into his arms. Makes sense. Behind the affectionate promise, he seemed to have changed into another person, making her feel strange and afraid. Phut, Saintess, how are you? Holy Maiden, Xianming sect. After using her last trace of inner energy, Lu Qingru finally could not hold on any longer. She spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. When the guards around her saw her, they hurried forward and helped her up. Saintess, that Feng Zhouqing has been poisoned by the resurrection Gu and will definitely die in 3 months. Why is Saintess in such a hurry to take her life now? Although the resurrection parasite was a mysterious underworld creature, it was still dangerous to anyone in the mysterious underworld sect. This was especially true for the Saintess, who was the master of this poisonous creature. When it devoured her, it showed no mercy. Saintess had already expended most of her internal energy just by activating the revival Gu in Feng Zhouqing's body, and she was also heavily injured. Hearing this, Lu Qingru suddenly laughed. That bastard Feng Zhouqing actually dared to betray me. It seems like he is really not afraid of death for Qin. If that's the case, then let him die forever. However, dying in front of Qin, she knew that her Qin would hate her even more. However, she was not afraid, not at all. Because the current Qin had already hated her. Sooner or later, Qin would hate her even more. If that was the case, what did she have to be afraid of? Ha 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 ha, she suddenly raised her head and laughed loudly. Qin, she really did not want to force her. However, if she did not do this, Qin would never look at her the same way. In her eyes, Qin must think of her as a monster. Right now, she was not even willing to do the most basic and simple thing of holding hands with her. If that was the case. She laughed until tears came out of her eyes. If that is the case, you will hate me sooner or later. Sooner or later, you will not accept me. Why should I care about your feelings? I only need to let you know that in this world, the person who truly loves you is me. The person who will sincerely keep you by my side, the person who can accompany you forever, is also me. Restrain your grief. The dead cannot come back to life. I believe the spirit of His Majesty in heaven also does not want to see you like this. It was already late at night. Shun He and the others were silent at the beginning, but in the end, they were really worried that something would happen to her, so they took turns to persuade her. The corpse in her arms was already stiff, and she could no longer feel the gentleness of the past. Her hand touched his stiff face. Shen Yueji only felt that even the breath she breathed out was painful. She had never thought that the scene in front of her would happen. Even when she was reborn, she had thought about it, hated it, and wanted to kill him. However, she had never thought that she would let him die in her arms. After all, he was the man she had loved for many years. Now that she knew the truth of the matter, how could her heart not be touched? Father, Mother, I'm fine. Let me hold him for a while. I'll be fine in a while. After hugging him, she would never be able to hug him again. The man she had loved for so many years was really going to disappear from this world. He would no longer exist. Your Highness, leave His Majesty to me. I will take care of the rest. Qiu Yang squatted in front of her. His eyes were red and swollen, but he did not cry. His eyes were bloodshot, and his resolute and handsome face was as cold as stone. Shen Yueji looked up at him. Isn't the person you should be loyal to? Why did you follow him to the northern underworld? The person Qiu Yang was loyal to should be that person in Foam Country. She was really surprised that he could appear in the northern underworld and follow him. As long as it is His Majesty, I will be loyal. But my heart tells me who I should be loyal to. His Majesty did not do anything wrong. It can only be said that fate is unfair. Now, His Majesty has done the last thing for your Highness. Even if he dies, he can see your Highness happy, so he has no complaints. Qiu Yang took Feng Joqing from her hands. Qiu Yang hugged her and a smile appeared on his face. It was a stiff smile, but he still smiled at Shen Yueji. The Emperor has never betrayed Her Highness. Do you still plan to return to Foam Country? Don't worry, Your Highness. I will bring His Majesty back to Foam Country and let him return to his hometown with glory. This subordinate knows where His Majesty wants to bury his remains. Undoubtedly, it was not the place where they used to live together. After His Majesty became the Emperor, that place had been abandoned. The former prince's mansion had long been gone. But, for His Majesty, that place was like a fairyland in this world. Chapter 957. Shen Yueji closed her eyes and did not let her tears fall. After a long time, she said softly, "Thank you. I will guard that place. I will not return to the Feng Nation's Emperor's side." Qiu Yang only had one master in his life. Now that his master is dead, Qiu Yang's responsibility is to guard his grave for the rest of his life. Farewell, Mother. Jia, it's all in the past. Mother knows that you are sad. If you want to cry, then cry. Mother and Father are here. Mother Shen looked at her with heartache. She suddenly walked forward and hugged Shen Yueji. Mother's daughter has a hard life. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. From the moment she was kidnapped by Lu Qingru, she first saw Shangguan Yu being tortured by them, then she saw Shen Yueji. She thought that the Shen family's position in Foam Country was unparalleled and that it was enough to protect their daughter. Little did they know that she had suffered so much. As her parents, they could only watch from afar. Not to mention helping her, they had implicated her. From the moment Lu Qingru captured us, Father and Mother already knew her goal. Her goal was to hold us hostage and force Qin to give in. Qin, I pity you. Because Father and Mother, Shen Yueji shook her head and looked at them. Father and Mother are so good to me. Qin will never forget this kindness. How can Qin let you risk your lives for Qin? This is what Qin should do. Mother, you don't need to say anything more. My fate with Feng Joqing has already ended. Today, it is just an explanation. This matter has nothing to do with Father and Mother. Speaking of which, Father and Mother are still implicated because of me. Silly daughter, what are you saying? When your father and I were captured, Mother thought that if Qin knew about this, she would be in a difficult position and blame herself. Qin, Father and Mother love you sincerely and have never thought of anything else. You must not have that kind of bad thoughts, do you understand? Shen Yueji held her hand and said, Mom, I know you and Dad are good to me. I don't want to see you sacrifice yourselves for me. I really can't take it anymore. I will remember all of your kindness to me. Whether it is your sacrifice or tolerance, I only hope that all of you can be well. The current Lu Qingru, I don't know how to treat her at all. She knows that you guys are my weakness. If When we return to the northern underworld with you, His Majesty will protect us. This way, we won't have to be afraid of the mysterious dark sect. Qin, have you forgotten what he said? I'm afraid the Feng Nation is about to start a war with Nan Yu. They don't have the time to care about us. All along, it was Mo Wushang who had been sacrificing for her. If he and the mysterious dark sect fell out at this time, then the people of the northern underworld would be destroyed. Tonight's Lantern Festival happened again. Everyone was trying to find fault with her. Shen Yueji shook her head. But right now, it might not be a bad thing for Shun He and the others to submit to the imperial court. They had already said that they would submit to the imperial court sooner or later. Other than that, Shun He had many brothers who had gone through life and death with him on the battlefield. This kind of friendship was the most real. Their loyalty to Shun He was no less than the commander's seal. Now, Shun He and the others were indeed safer after submitting to Mo Wushang. This way, no matter how powerful Lu Qingru was, she wouldn't be able to touch them. This way, she wouldn't need to be threatened by her anymore. Because to her, the only ones who could threaten her were Shun He and the others. Thinking of this, she looked at Shangguan Yu who was behind her. He had already woken up, but his face was still very pale. She walked towards him and was about to speak. He raised his weak hand and said, "Ji, you don't need to say more. Since I have chosen to follow you, I have already made up my mind. Even if I die, I have thought about it." Shangguan Yu was the only heir of the Shangguan family. Shen Yueji really didn't want him to, but seeing the determination on his face, she knew that she couldn't persuade him at all. Even Father Shen and Mother Shen tried to persuade her. Yu often came to the general's mansion when he was young. Because he was friends with his elders, father and mother know what kind of person Yu is. Ji, you don't need to persuade him anymore. I believe that Brother Shangguan and the others will respect Yu's opinion. They were all adults. They knew what she wanted to do and what she didn't want to do. Shangguan Yu looked at her and smiled. If my death can be exchanged for your attention, then I have no complaints. It was originally a joke, but when he said it, it made everyone fall into a short period of silence. Especially Shen Yueji. Her expression immediately changed. After a long time, her expression slowly improved. The most important thing now is to meet up with Mo Wushang and the others as soon as possible. If it's over, the Xianming sect might be playing tricks in the dark. Shen Yukai glanced at her and said, "Now, my father and mother's internal energy has been sealed. We don't have martial arts. If Lu Qingru knows that we are here, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape. Follow me. Just now, Feng Zhouqing told me where the exit is." When Shen He and Shen Qiu were trapped inside, even they didn't know where the exit was. Hearing this, Shen He and Shen Qiu hurriedly followed. "I heard that Grand Tutor Pang's daughter is dead." On the way, Shen Qiu suddenly said. Shen Yueji stopped in her tracks and didn't say anything. Shen Qiu's heart was heavy with worry. Although Mother doesn't care about foreign affairs, Mother has more or less heard about the degree of Pang Yuan's favor. Compared to you in the Feng Nation, it's not the slightest bit inferior. That Grand Preceptor Pang and Empress Dowager both spoiled her to death. She suddenly had an accident, and Lu Qingru is clearly pushing the responsibility to you. Ji, what do you think? Don't worry, Mother. The Empress Dowager is not an unreasonable person. Compared to the throne and the people of the northern underworld, Mo Wushang is more important. Is that so? Although Shen Qiu had her doubts, she also believed a lot of it. Her main doubt was that when the people of the royal family were faced with power and status, who would care about the insignificant kinship? But because it was Shen Yueji who said it, she was willing to believe it. In addition, she could see Mo Wushang's deep love for her daughter. She was also willing to believe it. Moreover, long ago, I told Tai who that father and mother would come to the northern underworld to serve the northern underworld. The Empress Dowager was very happy to hear it and didn't show any dissatisfaction. The northern underworld is in need of manpower after what happened previously. Even if Pang Yuan died tragically, it was not my doing. Chapter 958. Although I don't care about the affairs of other countries, I've heard a little about this Empress Dowager. Shen Qiu stepped forward and held her hand. Qin, I've already lost a daughter. I can't lose you too. As long as you're well, I'm willing to do anything. Speaking of this, she couldn't help but wipe her tears. I thought that with our abilities, we could protect you for the rest of your life. Who would have thought, that in the end, you would be implicated because of us? If it weren't for us, father, mother, the power of the Dark North Imperial family is enough to contend against the Xianming sect. Didn't you hear what Feng Zhouqing said? He can't even protect himself now, so why would he care about us? Although the Xianming sect is powerful, you must believe in Mo Wushang. Shen Yueji didn't know why, but she trusted him inexplicably. She forced a smile. Don't worry. Since I've promised to protect you, nothing will happen to you. I won't allow anyone to hurt you. Right now, we should return to the palace as soon as possible and meet up with Mo Wushang. Looking at Shangguan Yu, who looked even paler than before, Shen Yueji pursed her lips. Young Master Shangguan's injuries can't be delayed either. Since that's the case, let's go. Shen Yukai took the lead and walked in front. Seeing this, Shen He and the others hurriedly followed. This was a mountain where the cave entrance couldn't be seen from the outside. Even the people inside couldn't get out. Fortunately, when Feng Zhouqing led her in, he told her where the exit was. However, when they walked out of the cave, what greeted them was not dazzling eyes, but a majestic group of people. There were tens of thousands of people, and they looked valiant and heroic. At first glance, they could tell that they were different from ordinary soldiers. When they saw them, they looked at the man sitting on the back of a tall horse. He was already past middle age, but perhaps because he often led troops to war, he didn't look old at all, just like Shen He. When I was in the Dark North Kingdom, I've heard of General Shen's great name. Now that I've seen you in person, you truly live up to your reputation. He suddenly paused and looked fiercely at Shen Yueji behind him. It's a pity that no matter how famous General Shen is, his daughter is so despicable. Bah! Do you think your daughter is any better? Hearing him scold her daughter in a roundabout way, Shen Qiu, as her mother, naturally couldn't stand it anymore. The identity of the man in front of her, without guessing, she knew who it was. In the North Sea, other than Pang Shen, the Grand Tutor Pang, who had such a big lineup and could mobilize these 10,000-strong soldiers, who else had this ability? Even Shen Yueji had long known that Pang Shen would blame her for Pang Yuan's tragic death. After all, other than Lu Qingrou's deliberate attempt to frame Pang Yuan's death on her, Pang Shen had long been aware of the private matters between her and Pang Yuan. In the eyes of outsiders, he, Pang Shen, was a righteous man who loved his people like his own children. However, if this matter involved Pang Yuan, whose life could be more important than his own daughter's? Grand Tutor Pang, someone deliberately framed me. If Imperial Consort Pang was really killed by me, do you think that the Empress Dowager would let it go based on how much she dotes on Imperial Consort Pang? Ha ha ha. As if he had heard something funny, Pang Shen suddenly raised his head and laughed out loud. Perhaps it was because of the pain of losing his beloved daughter, his laughter was dull and oppressive. That's right, if you really killed WN, the Empress Dowager would be the first to not let you off. But, Shen Yueji, don't think that this old man doesn't know anything. You and the Xianming sect worked together to deal with WN and harm her life. Although WN wasn't killed by you, she died because of you. If it wasn't for you, she wouldn't have died without a corpse. He took the long sword from his subordinate and pointed it at her. General Shen, this old man respects you. Since your Shen family has sincerely pledged allegiance to the North Sea, then in the future, we will be on the same side. However, Shen Yueji harmed my daughter's life. This old man has no choice but to take revenge. Otherwise, I would be letting down WN's soul in heaven. Pang Shen, to think that you're the Grand Tutor of a nation. Are you being reasonable or not? If it wasn't for your shameless daughter repeatedly finding trouble with Jie and even trying to harm Jie's life, do you really think that Jie is willing to pay attention to her? Now, she has offended too many enemies and courted her own death. Why don't you say that those enemies of hers have been plotting for a long time and are just waiting for today to take her life? Pang Shun had always been unwilling to converse with women. He was born for the battlefield. Other than the death of his beloved woman, he put all his energy on the battlefield. He snorted coldly and suddenly jumped up from the horse's back, stabbing towards Shen Yueji. Demon girl! Return my daughter's life. Grand Tutor Pang has been an honest official all his life, but when it comes to his own daughter, he is willing to be a muddle-headed and disgusting tyrannical official. Shen Yueji coldly ridiculed him and did not dodge. She only knew some mediocre martial arts. Even if she dodged, where could she hide to? She was not as strong as Pang Shun. Just the sword that was stabbing towards her was enough to take her life. She had nowhere to hide. There was also Shen He and the others. Now, their inner strength was sealed by Lu Qingru. If it was in the past, according to Shun his martial arts, he could still compete with Pang Shun. Pang Shun was not the only one who came. He knew that Shun He and the others did not have any power behind them, but he still brought so many people. It was obvious that he had sealed off all their escape routes. Puff, Shen Yueji closed her eyes and was ready to die. However, the late pain did not come. Shen Yueji opened her eyes. At that moment, it was as if her eyes were covered by darkness. Before she could react to what was going on, she heard a cry of surprise. Shangguan Yu, you are. Pang Shun retreated several meters. The long sword pierced through the man's chest and came out again. Shangguan Yu's already pale face became even paler at this moment. He was like a fallen leaf that fell with the wind. At any time, he would leave her. At that moment, Shen Yueji staggered a few steps back. Her first reaction was not to hug him but to retreat. She only reacted when the man's body was about to fall to the ground. She hugged the man in her arms. You! Shangguan Yu, why are you so stupid? The long sword entered her heart. Blood was dazzling, and soon, her eyes were red. Her eyes were burning with pain. If it was Feng Jiuqing's death, she would feel sad, but more than that, she would feel relieved. But Shangguan Yu was different. From the beginning to the end, she owed him everything. She had always owed him. She owed him too much. No. I'm not stupid. How could I like you? Shangguan Yu smiled at her. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. I already expected this ending. Baidu read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Prince Regent, Provoking Body Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 959. Actually, you don't have to die. You can live well. Shen Yueji shook her head. The place where her hand touched was already covered in blood. Shen Yueji, there are so many people who care about you. Why do you have to steal my Wan's man? The man in front of him had a celestial appearance and an elegant aura that no one in the world could match. Pang Shun could tell that he was different from the others just by looking at him. He was willing to die for Shen Yueji without the slightest hesitation. It was enough to show how infatuated he was with Shen Yueji. But, well, anyway, you all have to die. Shen Yueji, I'll give you a chance. For the sake of my respect for old General Shun for so many years, I only want your life. As long as you are willing to die, I will let them go. In the future, when I go to the Dark North Imperial Court, I can also bury the hatchet and work together for the Dark North Empire. In your dreams. Shun He gritted his teeth and stood up. The reason why I am willing to submit to the Dark North Empire is because of my daughter. Yu is my best friend's only son. Before I came, I promised him that I would protect him. Now. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling. He had long regarded Shangguan Yu as his second son. Pang Shun, as the imperial tutor of the Dark North Empire, you are such a despicable person. You know that we can't move, but you use this to threaten Ji. What kind of righteous person are you? Righteous person? Pang Shun sneered and pressed forward. With every step, he could feel the trembling and unsteadiness of his body. This old man first supported the late emperor for several years, and now I've served your majesty for more than 20 years. My loyalty, my sincerity, for the sake of the Dark North Kingdom, This old man watched my beloved woman die in front of me, but I couldn't do anything. WN is in the wrong, but she is my daughter after all. She cannot be harmed by others. Shen He, if it was your daughter who died in front of you, how could you do righteous things? He sneered. Now that the emperor is an adult, he no longer needs me by his side. So, he would rather watch my daughter die in front of him and he would be indifferent. Shen He, as a father, can't you feel the love I have for my daughter? Pang Yuan wasn't killed by Ji at all. It was clearly your daughter who wanted to kill Ji. Before Ji came to the Dark North Kingdom, she had repeatedly found people to frame and kill her. If it wasn't for Ji's luck, our daughter would be dead right now. Pang Shen, your daughter reaped what she sowed. Shua, a cold light fiercely shot towards Shen Qiu. Shen Qiu was not afraid in the slightest. Even when a sharp blade was placed on her neck, there was not the slightest trace of fear on her face. This scene frightened Shen He and the others from far away. Madam. Mother. This was the first time she felt so powerless that she couldn't do anything. It wasn't like her previous life when she was assassinated. At that time, she only had herself. But now, she had so many people she cared about. Shen Yueji put down the man in her arms. Enough, what you want is only my life. I will give my life back to you. Let them go, they are innocent. No. Jia, I won't allow you to do this. I won't allow you to do this. Father and mother are people with one foot in the grave. What does it matter if you live one more or 1 year less? You are still young, I will not allow anything to happen to you. Madam, Shen He clenched his fists. He wanted to save her, but the Xianming sect's poison was too strong. No matter how much strength he used, it was useless. He could only watch them die. He watched as Shen Qiu slowly moved her neck towards the sharp blade in order to protect Shen Yueji. Blood gushed out from her neck as she closed her eyes and fell backward. Even the guard behind her did not expect that she would die so decisively. It was completely unexpected. She did not even give him a chance to retreat. Mother. Madam. The heart-wrenching voice was enough to paralyze Shen Yueji's mind. She staggered a few steps back. At this moment, she could no longer make a sound. She watched from afar as Shen Qiu fell to the ground powerlessly. She looked at her with a loving smile, like a loving mother looking at her mischievous and disobedient child. Shen Yueji fell to the ground. It was quiet all around her. She couldn't even hear the sound of crying. She didn't know what she was thinking, nor did she know what she was doing. She also didn't know where she was right now. It was as if this was a dream. When she woke up from the dream, everything would return to normal. They were all still alive, they were all still here. And she was the one who deserved to die. She knew that Shen Qiu was stalling for time for her. She was also gambling on when Mo Wushang would arrive. As long as he arrived, she would be saved. She was using her own life to stall for time, just to be able to protect her. How could she, mother? Pang Shen did not expect the scene in front of him. He did not expect that Shen Qiu would love her daughter so much. For Shen Yueji to not be threatened by him, she was willing to die. This made him feel a sense of sorrow in his heart. Ha ha ha. I have fought on the battlefield for so many years, but this is the first time I feel so helpless. I am like a fish on an iron plate, waiting to be slaughtered. Ha ha ha. The death of his beloved wife caused Shen his emotions to collapse. He laughed and stood up straight. He looked at Shen Yueji and said, "Daughter, don't be sad. Perhaps, this is father and mother's fate. You just need to remember that dad and mom won't regret it. They will never regret it. Once a daughter, always a daughter. Live well. You must live well. Only when you live well will you be able to repay us." Phut. Shen He spat out a mouthful of blood. There was nothing more difficult to accept than the death of one's loved ones in front of him. His heart felt like it was being squeezed by someone. It was riddled with holes. It was so painful that it made it hard for him to breathe. The people he cared about fell to the ground one by one in front of him. I've watched a good show. In the past, I was afraid of death. Pang Shen, tell me, a living person forcefully stabbing a large hole in his own body. What kind of tragedy would that be? Aren't they afraid of pain? At this time, Shen Yuechi's sneer was like a demon in Shen Yueji's mind. She raised her head and said, "Big brother." No, he was the only male in the Shen family. If he died, the Shen family would be completely extinct. She climbed up from the ground and ran towards him without a care. Big brother. Big brother, no, I beg you, no. Shen Yukai hugged her and patted her back to comfort her. His gentle words whispered in her ear like a lover's whisper. That night on the roof of the general's mansion, did I tell you that the woman I like is called Jiu Yuqin? The eldest daughter of the Jiu family? Chapter 960. Qin did I tell you that the woman I liked on the roof of the general's mansion that night was Jiu Yuqin, the eldest daughter of the Jiu family? Shen Yueji's body stiffened when she heard that. And the man, in the end, hugged her tightly in his arms, that tight strength, as if he wanted to melt her into his bones and blood. Remember, the woman I like is Jiu Yuqin. I'm going to find her. The word big brother was stuck in Shen Yueji's throat. She opened her mouth but couldn't utter a word. He said that the woman he liked was Jiu Yuqin, the eldest daughter of the Jiu family. It was her. She thought back to the day at the general's mansion and the complicated look he had when he saw her. It wasn't hatred, but an indescribable look. Now, she finally understood. It was the truth and complicated look he had when he found out that the woman he loved had died and suddenly became his biological sister. He knew that there was no longer any possibility between the two of them. Even the last trace of hope had turned into smoke. Maybe I'm not brave enough. He held Shen Yueji's hand. His hands were bone-piercingly cold, as if there was no warmth at all. He smiled slightly. If I hadn't been so afraid back then and snatched you without hesitation, perhaps, so many things wouldn't have happened. Big brother. Live well. You must remember that father and mother died for you. They all wanted you to live well in this world. In this life, we only want you to live a carefree life. No one will ever bully or hurt you again. It's a pity that we can't see the day you get married. Brother. No, the man was unusually good-looking. From the first time she saw him, Shen Yueji knew that the man was extraordinarily good-looking. Not many men in the world could be compared to him. Now, his face was pale and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked so weak that he looked like a sickly beauty who was about to die. She was hated by everyone since she was born. The servants in the house hated her and bullied her. Even her mother, who was the only one who could protect and comfort her, hated her like a poisonous snake. She wanted to beat her to death. She had never felt the feeling of being loved by someone since she was young. They were both daughters of the same mother. Her younger sister was only born a year later than her, yet she was able to receive so much love. She had always thought that her mother would not be kind and gentle to anyone, but she was only 1 year younger than her sister. Even if he was biased, whatever his younger sister chose should belong to her. But no, even if she ordered people to throw it away or destroy it, she would never give it to her younger sister. Not to mention the servants in the mansion, even a dog raised in the mansion had a much better life than her. Fate played a trick on her. She met Feng Jiuqing. She thought this man who was gentle to her and didn't despise her at all was the only light in her life. She had personally witnessed him colluding with Jiu Yuyin, framing her and putting her to death. Reincarnate. Perhaps fate pitted her after seeing her miserable life, so she was given a chance to be reborn. However, what did she get in exchange for this rebirth? Her parents had died because of her. Shang Guanyu died because of her, and Shen Yukai, the only male of the Shen family, died because of her. Boom! The originally clear sky was suddenly filled with thunder. The weather that turned from sunny to cloudy gave everyone a fright. Shen Yueji suddenly raised her head and laughed. Her sinister laughter was particularly terrifying in this sudden change of weather. Was it the heavens that pitied her, or did they think that she had suffered too little, allowing her to witness her hard-earned family die in front of her one by one in order to protect her? Grand Tutor, look! A subordinate behind him suddenly screamed and pointed at Shen Yueji. Pang Shen did not want Shen He and the others to die. After all, Shun he could be of service to Dark North, and that was exactly what he wanted. Shun his reputation on the battlefield was definitely not just a legend. He really did have the strength to do so. From the beginning to the end, he only wanted Shun Yueji's life. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that the Shun couple, even he himself, who said that he loved Wanna, would not sacrifice himself for her to this extent without thinking about it? Under the scream of the subordinate, Pang Shun looked at Shun Yueji with a complicated expression. With one look, he was completely stunned. His throat seemed to be strangled, and he couldn't say a word for a long time. His eyes were fixed on the woman whose white hair was fluttering in the wind. She was dressed in a red dress, stained with a lot of blood, which blended with her dazzling red dress. It was enough to shock people. But now, the current Shun Yueji was not stunning at all. Her white hair fluttered in the wind, and her dazzling red dress looked like it was covered in fresh blood. The aura around her was like that of a demon from the netherworld. Her eyes were scarlet, and there were countless terrifying scars on her fair and beautiful face. Those scars were like branches and leaves, spreading across her face. Pang Shun was shocked. These people were all elite secret guards who had gone through fire and water with him. They had won countless battles, and what kind of scene hadn't they seen? Now Shun Yueji looked like this, not to mention them, even Pang Shun himself was shocked. He subconsciously felt that Shun Yueji was a little abnormal at the moment, and he stepped back. Pang Shun, I will make you pay with blood. Shun Yueji's scarlet eyes suddenly shot at him. At that moment, it was like countless knives were cutting him to death. Pang Shun was a great tutor, so he quickly calmed down and pointed his sword at her. Witch. You really are a witch. Look at your appearance, neither human nor ghost. His Majesty is really bewitched by you. Go, execute this witch on the spot for this old man. This old man will use her blood as a sacrifice to WNR's soul in heaven. Tens of thousands of people, majestic and mighty. There were dozens of secret guards flying towards her with swords, but Shun Yueji didn't even look at them and waved her hand. Those black-clothed shadow guards, who were highly skilled in martial arts, seemed to have lost all gravity. Their bodies were as light as kites, flying out uncontrollably. As they flew into the air, only a few loud bangs could be heard. What followed after was a rain of fresh blood. The scene in front of them completely scared the tens of thousands of secret guards behind them. Even if they were able to kill on the battlefield, they weren't afraid of death. It was just a matter of a knife slipping across their necks. But Shun Yueji was different. They didn't know her background at all. If it was before, they would only think of her as an ordinary woman who knew some mediocre martial arts. Any one of them here could easily kill her. But now it was different. The martial arts they were so proud of, in front of Shun Yueji, were not even worth mentioning. Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Regent, Provoking Clawbook House for free. Chapter 961. Dozens of highly skilled shadow guards stepped forward, but they were no match for her. In front of this woman, there was no way they could fight back. Pang Shun was unwilling. Everyone, attack. There were a few loyal ones who didn't believe in heresy, and hundreds of dark guards stepped forward together. In the end, they ended up the same as the dozens of shadow guards before. In the blink of an eye, more blood rained down from the sky. Behind him was a dense mass of people. It was a terrifying sight to behold. But no matter how scared they were, how could it be compared to the fear Shun Yueji gave them? Grand Preceptor, this witch, Pang Shun didn't believe it. I don't believe it. I want to see just how capable you are, you demoness. Men, continue to attack. Although the shadow guards were afraid, they were even more afraid of Pang Shun. After all, it was difficult to disobey their master's orders. They gritted their teeth and continued to charge forward. Back and forth like this, from the tens of thousands of people before, there were only a few thousand people left. The remaining few thousand people did not dare to move forward. Because even if they rushed out, they would not be able to harm Shun Yueji at all and would lose their lives in vain. Pang Shun's old face was solemn. He pulled out his long sword and planned to charge forward himself. He didn't believe that Shen Yueji had such a great ability. He was sure that she was using some kind of witchcraft. Otherwise, how could the Imperial secret guards that he had carefully trained for so many years not be her opponent? In the hands of this witch, they did not even have the strength to fight back. He had already investigated Shen Yueji's background. This woman did not know any martial arts at all. Even if she did, it was only for show and no substance. How could she compare to them who had been on the battlefield for a long time? Grand Preceptor, think twice. This woman is very strange. In the blink of an eye, so many people died in her hands. Grand Preceptor, you, all of you, back down. Today, I will cut off her head. Pang Shen's internal strength was strong, and when facing Shen Yueji, he used all his strength. At first, Shen Yueji found it difficult to resist. In the end, the man was old, and when he released all his internal strength, his strength also reached a limit. Gradually, after a few moves with Shen Yueji, not only did he not take down this woman, he also began to pant. When he hit the last palm, he was hit by Shen Yueji's palm. He staggered back a few steps and spat out a mouthful of blood. Grand Preceptor, Shen Yueji, are you a human or a demon? Pang Shen fiercely wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and glared at her. What is your purpose in getting close to the Emperor? So what if I'm a human or a demon? How can I compare of dirty people like you? Shen Yueji sneered. The scars on her face made her feel horrified. She could no longer find the beauty she had before. Pang Shen, go down and repent to them. Of Pang, a secret guard stepped forward and stood in front of Pang Shen. Grand Tutor Pang is an important minister of the Northern Underworld. If anything happens to him, the Northern Underworld state will be destroyed. Shen Yueji, you. Before the man could finish his words, Shen Yueji's attack had turned him into a corpse on the spot, and he fell to the ground. Pang Shen was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He had personally witnessed his brothers, who had gone through thick and thin with him, die miserably in front of him in the blink of an eye. Yet, he could do nothing about it. Demon. His voice was filled with anger, and he shouted at the top of his lungs. If you have a grudge against me, come at me. I'm the one who killed your parents and hurt them, not them. Don't. Grand Preceptor, run. She's a demon. Grand Preceptor, go and report this to His Majesty. We'll hold this demon back. Run. Today, you'll all die with them. Where can you run to? Shen Yueji rose into the air, her thin body hanging in the air. Her red clothes fluttered and her white hair was dazzling. She raised her hand slightly. There were already several black-clothed bodyguards who could not control their bodies and rose into the air following her hand gesture. Then, there was the sound of an explosion in the air. Pang Shen broke down. You demon, stop. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? I'll take responsibility for what I've done. I've said it before. I killed your parents. If you want to take revenge, I'll kill you. If you want revenge, come at me. What's the rush? They're not dead yet and you can't take it anymore. Weren't you very proud just now? One after another, corpses died in front of him. There were originally thousands of guards left, but in the blink of an eye, only a few were left. The casualties continued. Pang Shen was on the verge of collapse. Shen Yueji, you can't do this. They're all loyal subjects of the North Underworld and have made countless contributions to the North Underworld. Don't you like His Majesty? Killing them is equivalent to destroying His Majesty's empire. What benefits do you get by doing this? Mo Wushang. These three words caused Shen Yueji to fall into a trance for a moment. But soon, more corpses fell in front of Pang Shen. At this moment, the last few people had also become ice-cold corpses one after another. Pang Shen fell to the ground powerlessly. His body was numb. At this moment, he couldn't even use his internal energy. Shen Yueji stood in front of him. She looked down at him. How is it? Pang Shen raised his head and laughed at himself. Are you a human or a demon? I'm a human, but you forced me to become a demon. Gently caressing her ugly face and rubbing the ugly marks on it, Shen Yueji suddenly smiled. Pang Shen, You definitely don't know how much pain my heart is in, and even more so, you don't know what I've been through. It's true that whoever's child will feel heartache. Other people's daughters should be trampled on and pushed out to die. Wan is wrong. She's not wrong, but I'm wrong. Let me be the villain. What conscience do I still have? She stretched her hand towards him. He had no strength to resist. All the guards he brought were dead. His daughter was dead. His brothers who risked their lives with him were also dead. In a night, he, the high and mighty Grand Tutor of the country, had nothing left. Pang Shen closed his eyes in despair. Death was nothing to be afraid of. He couldn't win against Shen Yueji. He accepted it. Stop. A familiar voice was full of anxiety. However, Shen Yueji's action didn't stop because of the voice behind her. Pang Shen didn't have time to open his eyes. Shen Yueji made him widen his eyes. Then, his body fell to the ground powerlessly. Hong Fui quickly stepped forward and pushed Shen Yueji away. When he saw that Pang Shen was no longer breathing, his face immediately changed. Someone, quickly take this demon girl. Baidu read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Regent, Messing with Claw Book House for free. Chapter 962. Halfway through his sentence, he saw Shen Yueji. Even though the current Shen Yueji was very different from before, he still recognized her at first glance. His throat felt like it was being squeezed by someone. He looked at Shen Yueji in disbelief. You. How did you change? Mo Wushang, who had just arrived, looked at her. His eyes were dark, but his face was still expressionless. He walked towards her and stretched out his hand, wanting to pull her into his embrace. Jia, everything is fine now. Come back to the palace with me. However, before his hand could touch Shen Yueji, the woman forced him to retreat like a plague. Her white hair was so eye-catching, and the way she looked at him was full of unfamiliarity. Why do you want Jia to go back with you? To court death? A mocking voice came from afar. Lu Qingru, dressed in white, descended from the sky like a fairy, landing steadily in front of Shen Yueji. Holding her hand, he caressed her ugly face with his pale and boneless fingers. Qin, you must not believe her words. Now that you have become like this, besides me, they have long hated your face in their hearts. I'm here to take you back. After fighting with me for so long, it's all in the past now. Come back to Shenming sect with me, and we'll live a good life, okay? Bang! A swift and fierce palm wind suddenly attacked her. Lu Qingru did not dodge. Just as the palm wind was about to hit her, countless Shenming sect's secret guards suddenly appeared in front of her. Mo Wushang's palm hit all the fake shadows. The veins on the back of his hand wrinkled, and his sharp eyes locked onto Shen Yueji. Come back to the palace with me. Shen Yueji raised her head and looked at him, still looking at him as if he was a stranger. Go back with you. Can you give those ministers an explanation? I killed them, Pang Shen, and the people he brought with him, they were all killed by me. Mo Wushang, from now on, let's not have any contact anymore. The woman's strange words were like a thorn, fiercely stabbing into the man's heart, riddling him with holes in a short time. What did you say? You said that you would protect them for the rest of their lives, but in the end, all I saw was them dying helplessly in front of me. Mo Wushang, I killed a loyal official of the Northern Dark Kingdom, and your men also killed the people I care about the most. We're even. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. Miss Shen, it's not what you think. My master is clearly. Clearly what? Since you don't have the ability to protect Qin, then stop saying that you love Qin. Mo Wushang, your love is really frightening. If I hadn't placed a life-saving talisman on Qin's body in advance, I'm afraid that what we would see today would be her corpse. The man wasn't the kind of person who was good at explaining. His dark eyes never left Shen Yueji's body, and his hand was still in the same position as before. Qin, come back with me. I will give you an explanation. Explanation? Shen Yueji laughed self-deprecatingly. Your instructions will always hurt me. Mo Wushang, I will never trust you again. Qin, stop him. Yes, holy maiden. Qin, Your Majesty. This is the Xianming sect's most poisonous Xian Huan technique. No matter how strong a person is, he will not be able to split himself into two. Your Majesty. Your Majesty, be careful. Although I will no longer have anything to do with him in the future, I didn't say that I want his life. What are you doing? Shun Yueji frowned as she looked at the man who was trapped by the Xian Huan technique of dozens of women. Mo Wushang's martial arts are strong. The people of the pugilistic world are afraid of the Xian Huan technique of our Xianming sect, but not him. It's just that he is distracted because of you, Qin. It will be difficult for him to rush out in a short period of time. Don't worry, I won't kill him. At most, I will delay him for a while and injure him. This way, he won't be able to disturb me and Qin. Lu Qingru stepped forward and held her hand, looking at her affectionately. Qin, do you know how long I have waited for this day? Now, I can really have you. You don't know how happy I am right now. It's like a dream. Xianming sect 3 days later. Wedding attire. It was unknown how many times the wedding attire had been changed. Shun Yueji didn't express her opinion. It was because she didn't express her opinion that Lu Qingru thought that she didn't like it. From the beginning to the end, there was no impatience on her face. Since she didn't like it, she ordered people to make it again until she liked it. Qin, you still don't like it. Then what do you like? I remember that you once told me that you liked this red style. I've memorized all of these and made them according to your favorite style. Are you still not satisfied with them? If you are not satisfied, why don't you tell me what else you want to add? That's true. She smiled. After so many years, the style you like might have changed. It's fine. Just tell me what you like. When the time comes, I will get people to make everything you like. Have a cup of tea. You have been quite busy these days. Looking at the tea that she brought to her, Lu Qingru couldn't help but feel flattered. He took it from her hands and gulped it down without a second thought. She held Shun Yueji's hand. Qin, tell me what you like. I will immediately ask them to make it. There was a mirror on the table. Shun Yueji picked up the mirror and looked at her ugly face. She touched it and said softly, no matter how beautiful the wedding attire is, if I don't look good, no matter how gorgeous I wear it, it can't hide my ugly face. Later, she found out that the reason why she looked like this was actually before she came to Feng Country. When Lu Qingru detoxified her, she had poisoned herself with an ugly mite. If she was provoked again, the poison would act up and she would become like this. She had expected it. All of this was within her expectations. Thinking of the cup of tea she drank just now, her eyes flashed but she didn't say anything. Qin, don't say silly things. I know that you must be angry at me for making you look like this. Don't worry, I won't despise you. No matter what you become, I will still love you. If you want to be like before, I will think of a way, okay? I will let you be like before. I will. Suddenly, she felt a tearing pain in her stomach. Lu Qingru smiled and continued to hold her hand. She spoke gently to her, in my heart, Qin will always be the most beautiful. In this world, no woman can compare to you. Since you know that I poisoned you, why did you drink it? Blood flowed from the corner of Lu Qingru's mouth. She smiled. Because the tea was brought by Qin, so I had to drink it. Even if it's poison, it's still Qin's kind intentions. Big brother died because he took this poison. Today, I brought it here and gave it to you. Shun Yueji pulled her hand out of Lu Qingru's hand and walked out. Outside the door, the Xianming sect's guards stopped her. The woman scolded, no one is allowed to stop her. Even if I die, I won't allow you to touch her. If I no longer exist in this world, then she will be the future saint of the Xianming sect. Saint. 2 streams of tears rolled down Shun Yueji's cheeks. If we can be friends, we should be the best friends in this world. Unfortunately, Qin, unfortunately, we can never be friends, because I love you. I thought that since I was about to die, you would stay by my side and watch over me until I died. Speaking of which, I'm truly envious. I'm envious that Feng Jiuqing was able to die in your arms while I could only watch your indifferent back. Qin, are you really not willing to look back at me? They're all dead, I'm also dead. I'm dying with them, so what's there to look back at? Killing you is just to give them an explanation, to give myself an explanation. You're the one behind all this. The reason why Pang Shen was able to find this place was also because of your plan. Feng Jiuqing betraying you to help me was also within your expectations. Everyone is your pawn, including me. Lu Qingru, I'm tired. I can use everyone, I can kill everyone, but I won't hurt you. Letting me watch my loved ones die one by one in front of me, while I can only look on helplessly. Isn't this hurting me? I'd rather those injuries fall on me, because that way, I'll be the only one dying. Are you going to look for him? Him? Shen Yueji raised her head and looked at the sky. Maybe I've really fallen in love with him, but in this world, it's not like anyone can't live without him. Right now, I just want to be alone, to stay quietly in a corner, and never be disturbed by anyone. Lu Qingru, I don't owe you any more. Qina. No matter how hysterically Lu Qingru called out to her from behind, the result was that she did not even turn around or look at her indifferently. Qina. How can you? How can you be so heartless to me? How, Saint? Saint. Chapter 963. 4 years later. Did you hear? The Emperor of Feng Country suddenly died. Really? Yes. Based on the news from last night, the Emperor of Feng Country is still young, right? He's not even 30 years old, and he didn't get sick. There were no rumors that he was unwell. He just suddenly died. Don't you think it's strange? Fenglai Inn. Groups of 3 to 5 burly men gathered around a table, munching on melon seeds as they chatted. The people of the Jianghu rarely cared about the matters of the imperial court. However, if something big happened in the imperial court, it would be a different story. Not only that, even the Dark North Emperor didn't care about the matters of the imperial court for many years. In the past 4 years, ever since the Grand Tutor passed away, the Empress Dowager has been managing it. I don't know where the Emperor went. Everyone says he's in the palace, but I heard from a friend in the palace that the Emperor left the palace a long time ago. How is that possible? The Empress Dowager is old, after all. Everything has to be handled by the Emperor. The sudden death of Grand Tutor Pang, this Dark North Kingdom's guts. That's right. Is your news reliable? Also, where did you hear about the sudden death of the Feng Nation's Emperor? Isn't that because I have friends in the palace? They told me the news first. You have to believe me. This news is 100% true. If it was fake, would I dare to say it? Both of them are big shots. Even if you gave me 100 guts, I wouldn't dare to spout nonsense and curse them. The Emperor of Feng Country doesn't have an heir. If he really died, what about the Emperor of Feng Country? Of course it would be our Dark North Kingdom. At this time, as long as the news is reliable, we can send our troops and take back the Feng Country that has lost its backbone. The problem is, our Dark North Kingdom's Emperor is gone too. Everyone, now that you mention it, I seem to have thought of something. What is it? Everyone was curious and pricked up their ears. Naturally, it's about the Feng Country's Emperor. I heard that on the night before the Feng Country's Emperor died, he went to the favored concubine, Noble Concubine Shen's palace and smashed all of Noble Concubine Shen's belongings. Also, the servants who had been cleaning the Feng Qi palace said that they saw the Emperor sitting on Noble Concubine Shen's chair, hugging his head and crying. Really? An emperor of a country crying over a woman? How was this supposed to be? If the Feng Nation's emperor didn't cry, who would dare to talk about him like that? Not to mention the servants in the palace. Were they not afraid of death? Isn't our Dark North Emperor the same? If you ask me, this Imperial Concubine Shen is a femme fatale. After Imperial Concubine Shen came to the Dark North Kingdom, she disappeared again. It's said that in order to find her, the Dark North Emperor traveled north and south for 4 years. Who knows how many places he went? And his body is as thin as a skeleton. If he still can't find her, I'm afraid that the Dark North Emperor won't be able to live for long. The woman sitting on the left by the window suddenly stood up. Along with her, A 3-year-old child sitting opposite her also stood up. Mother, where are you going? We haven't even finished eating the food we just ordered. Don't waste food. When the woman heard this, she turned back to look at him. Her sharp eyes couldn't help but soften a little. You eat first. Mother is going out to get some fresh air. Oh. The little boy held a chicken drumstick in each hand. He took a bite of the drumstick and raised his head to look at his mother who was walking out. Listening to the conversation at the next table, he knew that there was definitely something wrong with their conversation. In the past, his mother would never leave him alone to get some fresh air. Brother Lee, you said that Imperial concubine Shen's face was disfigured in the end? And she became a monster. She was neither human nor ghost. Those who saw her were all scared to death. Is it that scary? Of course. You didn't see it. You should know. This little doll. Do you have something on your mind? The little body struggled to climb up the table. While everyone was talking and spitting saliva, he went to grab some melon seeds. However, he caught a chubby child. This made them all shocked. However, when they saw the little doll's face, they couldn't help but like him. Where should we go next? With a veil covering his face, only a pair of black pearl-like eyes could be seen. Looking at the bustling streets. For the first time, Shen Yueji didn't know where to go. The other Feng Jiuqing was also dead. The Feng nation was going to be completely destroyed. 4 years had passed. When she heard this, she didn't feel anything. On the contrary, she felt more relieved. However, after hearing his name, Mo Wushang, go to a place where there are only you and me. The familiar man's voice was something she would never forget even if she died. It was deep and hoarse. Shen Yueji turned her head suddenly. The man's body was straight like a jade tree. However, he had lost a lot of weight. His chin was so shaved that his bones could be seen. His bones and horns were so distinct. Compared to before, he had lost a lot of weight. The loose robe on his body looked like a skeleton. He couldn't hold it up at all. Shen Yueji stood in place and didn't move. However, the man quickly walked towards her and held her in his arms. His eyes were bloodshot, and the warm liquid flowed down her neck. The most infatuated confession was, I've been looking for you for 4 years. He had been to many places in the world. He was the emperor of a nation. Thousands of miles of rivers and mountains belonged to him. However, this was the first time he realized how difficult it was to find a woman among so many people in such a big world. He didn't know how long he could hold on. If he couldn't find her, he didn't know if he could live on. Shina, after a long time, Shen Yueji reached out and hugged him. I knew you would find me. Actually, she was making a bet. The time limit was 6 years. The moment the Shen couple died, she was disheartened. She had planned to find a place to end her life after killing Lu Qingru. However, when she died, she found out that she was pregnant. For the sake of the child, she lived. Perhaps the fate between her and Mo Wushang shouldn't have been broken. She had given herself a deadline of 6 years. If they were really fated, they would meet sooner or later. If not, she would raise his child on her own. Everyone had died for her. How could she allow herself to live the rest of her life so happily? But in the end, was it because they couldn't bear to let go of her misfortune, or was it fate between her and Mo Wushang? Mo Wushang, she called his name softly. The man held her tightly in his arms. I'm here. Is the double happiness okay? After she left, she didn't know how the double happiness was doing. The man's voice was dull. He hugged her even tighter. After knowing the news of their death, he fell seriously ill. The imperial doctors in the palace couldn't do anything. 3 years ago, let's not go back to the palace, okay? Okay, where do you want to go? I'll go with you. He didn't want to lose her again. In this life, I want to go to a faraway place, a place where I can find them. Mo Wushang, I gave birth to a son for you. The man pursed his thin lips. Looking at her, he didn't say anything. Shen Yueji took off her veil, revealing a face that was as beautiful as a lotus flower that had just emerged from the water, a face that was enough to stun anyone. I found an expert to detoxify the ugly mite. There was no antidote for the ugly mite, and it was Lu Qingru who did it. You have to pay the price. She didn't tell the man what the price was. Instead, she held his hand tightly. Promise me, no matter what happens in the future, you have to raise our child and let him inherit the throne. The North Sea's empire can't be broken in your generation. The 3 countries will be unified sooner or later. Take advantage of the current instability of the countries. The civil strife among them can't be pacified in a few years. Even if they can be pacified, they will be swallowed by the merger of several countries. This is a good opportunity for the North Sea. And she didn't have much time left. The divine doctor said she only had 9 years to live. Now, 4 years had passed, and there were only 5 years left. She held the man's hand and walked to Fenglai Inn. The little child looked like him. He was chatting with those Jianghu warriors. Seeing her coming, he waved to her happily. Mother, mother, come here. After saying that, he looked at the handsome man beside her. He turned his head and said to those Jianghu warriors cheerfully, "Look, I haven't seen my mother for a while, and she immediately found me a stepfather." Read the latest chapter of Super Cute Pet Concubine, Regent, Messing with Clawbook House for free. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.